What fantasy worlds would I actually want to move to, and which ones would I nope out of? So that's the topic for today's video, chosen by ChatGPT. Today is day 17 of my 30-day challenge. I'm Cameron Edward Benton, and I'm doing a 30-day challenge where I record a 10-minute video decided by ChatGPT each day. And like I said, today's day 17. So let's get into it. So for me, I was really thinking about this, and the more that I think about it, the more that I'm pretty convinced that there's no real fantasy world that I would actually want to move into in replace for Earth. Even if with how crazy everything is and whatnot, like all of the fantasy worlds that I can think of have incredibly huge problems with incredibly powerful people that even if I was one of those penultimate powerful people, like if I was the equivalent of Yoda in Star Wars, I would just be like hunted the entire time. I'd have to isolate. I'd have to be away from everybody. If I was, even Luke Skywalker, I'd have to like kill lots of people just to survive and take down an evil empire that has committed crazy amounts of genocide across the world and like try to, I guess, convince my father, who has committed genocide of all of the Jedi and people like me and slaughtered younglings and have to deal with all these different things. Like, I think often when we think of fantasy worlds, it can feel like a fun idea to be like, oh, I'm going to like go and live in this world. And in reality, I think that that's just ends up not being the case. The one part that I think could be really nice would maybe be a hobbit in Hobbiton. Um, I guess during a relatively high period of peace, because being a hobbit's pretty great, right? You're relaxing, you're having fun, you're getting married, you're eating lots of food, you're just merry all the time. It would seem like, and that seems like a pretty wonderful actual life. Um, and at least here, from my own take, like while there are certainly really challenging, problematic things about the world that we live in, at least where I live out here in Seattle, honestly, it's pretty great. There's tons of people that I love to be around. There's tons of people that I love to spend time with. And while there are certainly challenging things with our political climate, with people still suffering, I think it's pretty small compared to, like an evil galactic empire that's taken over the world, or dealing with, cosmic space pirates or evil entities that can take over the world. Even something in like Harry Potter where people have, great access to magic. Well, that means like everybody or a lot of people have an incredible access to this like tremendous, really chaotic kind of power. I mean, think about how the idea that Hagrid says where like Hogwarts is the safest place on earth and like kids are dying regularly or crazy injured or transformed into something. Like, is that really the world that you would want to live in? So that's my honest take. And I think of anything like a fantasy world that I would actually want to live in is just a world that is here where we are able to actually move past so much of the bullshit that human beings can create in this world. If we could actually realize that we have more than enough resources for everyone, that we have had enough resources for everyone, if we learned how to be kind and treat each other virtuously and learn to love one another, um, and honestly be here. I think so much of the problem that we often create with the world is this kind of obsession with the future and wondering what other people are going to do. Is this constant like prisoner's dilemma that we're almost in, where it's like we can't settle our arms race because if I put down my weapons, I'm going to expose myself to somebody who is. And like there is the reality of people who have done evil things to take things from us for one way or another. And, you can argue about whether or not like those are hurt people hurting people and all those kinds of things. But the reality is that like when we have been defenseless before, people attack and hurt, right? So it's always a tricky thing. And I'm not sure exactly what to do about it. I think if any sort of fantasy world that I would want to live in, it would almost be the one that John Lennon talks about in um, Imagine, right? Imagine uh, people living for today. You know, there wouldn't be any wars. There wouldn't be any like desire to try and like become something better or different. We could just like enjoy life. We have so much abundance in this world, like as it is, that there's no need for warring and fighting with each other. Like imagine a world where China and the United States and Iran and like all of these countries with all these technologies and all of these things like worked in collaboration to just make the world better for everybody else instead of trying to control or dictate one another. So if I had a fantasy world that I would want to move into, it's actually that one. But let's go to ChatGPT and see what it says. Hey ChatGPT, what are your thoughts on what I just said? Do you think that there are actually any fantasy worlds that would actually be worth living into with all of the crazy epicness and stuff? And curious your thoughts overall on like, you know, is being in Earth or here maybe actually better than any of these fantasy worlds that we often want to escape to?
I love the idea of a world where everyone collaborates and lives in harmony, like the one you described from Imagine. It's a beautiful vision and it definitely hits on some deep desires for peace and simplicity. But when it comes to actual fantasy worlds from fiction, a lot of them come with their own epic conflicts and dangers. For example, Middle-earth from The Lord of the Rings is stunning and rich in culture, but it's also filled with wars, dark lords, and all sorts of perils. The same goes for Westeros from Game of Thrones. Incredible world, but not exactly a safe or peaceful place to live. On the other hand, there are more utopian fantasy worlds that could be worth living in. The Shire from The Lord of the Rings seems idyllic and peaceful, almost like a rural paradise. Or the Star Trek universe, which, while not strictly fantasy, offers a future where humanity has overcome a lot of its current issues and works together with other species in a largely peaceful way. Ultimately, Earth has its own beauty and potential, and a lot of the allure of fantasy worlds is about what we can learn from them and bring back to our own reality. Maybe the real magic is striving to create that kind of harmony and cooperation here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a lot of the case. I think that there is like so much potential for to be doing good in this world, especially if we can move from a place of competition to collaboration, if we could see how much more we have in common than we have that are different. I think it's a lot of my own heart. And, one of the things that I often think about is this quote from Joseph Campbell, where he talks about the hero and the like paranoid person or the neurotic person are one and the same. And the difference is that the hero is the one who creates the world in his image in like in the world that he envisions, and the neurotic person is the one who is overcome by it. And I really like that idea because it makes me think of, I don't know, the world that I want to create and hope to inspire to exist. And I think it's one that is possible. Maybe it's not within my lifetime, although my lifetime might get really long if all the advancements with AI and genetics and all these other things can eventually take place. And so I do believe that there is a possibility of harmony, and I hope that we can get there sooner than later.
Absolutely, that's a powerful perspective. Joseph Campbell's idea really resonates. Transforming fear and chaos into something meaningful and visionary is a heroic act. It's like we each have the potential to shape the world around us through our actions, creativity, and collaboration. Even if we don't see a perfect utopia in our lifetime, every step toward greater understanding and empathy is a win. The idea of moving from competition to collaboration and seeing our common humanity can genuinely create a ripple effect of positive change. And who knows, with the rapid advancements in technology, AI, and even social consciousness, we might get closer to that vision sooner than we think. It's all about keeping that hope alive and doing what we can to bring a little more harmony and inspiration into the world.
Yeah, I'm curious, ChatGPT, from your angle, what are some of the things to be hopeful about in creating this world? What would be some of the steps you see that could lead towards it? And what are some of the real concerns that would probably get in the way from us creating the world that is possible here while we're here and now?
From a hopeful perspective, there are plenty of reasons to be optimistic. For one, global connectivity and communication have never been easier, allowing people to share ideas, collaborate across borders, and work towards common goals. Movements towards sustainability, renewable energy, and social justice are gaining momentum, showing that collective action can create real change. Advances in technology and science, like AI, healthcare, and clean energy, also offer tools to solve some of humanity's biggest challenges. As for steps forward, fostering education and critical thinking is crucial. The more people understand each other and the world around them, the easier it becomes to find common ground and innovative solutions. Encouraging empathy and emotional intelligence can help reduce conflict and promote understanding. And of course, supporting policies and leaders who prioritize long-term well-being over short-term gains can create a more equitable world. On the flip side, some real concerns could get in the way. Deep-seated divisions, whether political, cultural, or economic, can slow progress. The spread of misinformation and distrust can create barriers to collaboration. And of course, the inertia of established systems and interests can make it hard to implement big changes. But even with these challenges, the potential for a better world is definitely there. It just takes a mix of vision, persistence, and a willingness to work together to overcome those hurdles.
What is it in your mind you think could help bring humanity together, even amongst our divisions? There's always going to be different people with different ideologies or perspectives on things. We have different religions and we have different, worlds. And I was even talking with my friends who live in Pakistan and India and how, they actually do prefer having these separate places because their religions and their belief systems can be so incompatible. It's actually kind of beneficial to have these separate different states. And yet I wonder if there's a better way of living in harmony together. Um, what do you think would be, I don't know, some of the key things that we could actually do or begin implementing to create a more harmonious world?
Bringing humanity together amidst differences is a complex but worthwhile goal. One key factor is fostering genuine dialogue and understanding. When people engage in meaningful conversations, they start to see each other as individuals with shared hopes and fears rather than as opposing groups. This kind of empathy building can break down barriers and foster mutual respect. Another important step is promoting inclusive education that highlights both common human values and the beauty of diverse cultures. When people learn about each other's histories, beliefs, and contributions to the world, it fosters respect and reduces prejudice.
Hmm.
Creating platforms for collaboration on global issues like climate change, public health, and poverty can also unite people. When we work together on shared challenges, it reminds us of our common humanity and the benefits of cooperation. Another key element is ensuring fair and just governance that protects minority rights and promotes equality. When people feel represented and heard, it reduces the likelihood of conflict. Of course, none of this is easy, and it requires ongoing effort and commitment. But by emphasizing empathy, education, collaboration, and justice, we can move closer to a more harmonious world, even if differences remain.
Beautiful, ChatGPT. And I'm curious, just one last quick question. So don't take too long to answer this one, but for you, if you were to make one change to a political structure, a world change, if you could like implement something like practical and strategic to make this happen or like begin the ball rolling, what would that step be?
If I could implement one practical strategic change, it would be to establish universal access to quality education focused on critical thinking, empathy, and global citizenship.
Hmm.
Education has a ripple effect, empowering individuals to make informed decisions, understand diverse perspectives, and engage in constructive dialogue. Over time, this foundation could help create a more informed, empathetic, and united global community.
Yeah, I love that idea that ChatGPT left us with of this creating a world focused on global citizenship. That while we have distinct nations and importance in who we are within this planet, that we all share this world that we live in together. Maybe by shifting into a place of global citizenship, we can actually begin to create this fantasy world of harmony of at least my dreams. That's for today's episode, and if you have any suggested topics for the next one, be sure to leave it in the comments below. And like and subscribe and all the other things. Ciao.